If you've ever dated someone with an avoidant attachment style, you probably know the feeling of being stuck in a constant push-pull loop. They get close, then suddenly pull back. They show interest, then go distant, and you're left questioning whether you should keep investing or finally walk away. Here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. Avoidant partners don't actually need more patience from you. They don't need endless understanding or you bending yourself into knots to accommodate them. What they truly need are clear, firm boundaries that require them to make an actual choice about the relationship. These boundaries aren't about manipulation, punishment, or playing emotional chess. They're about protecting your emotional well-being and creating a dynamic that can actually last. Because one of the hardest truths to accept is this: you cannot love someone into healing their attachment wounds. They have to want that growth for themselves, and they have to choose it. One of the first boundaries that changes everything is refusing to have relationship conversations that go absolutely nowhere. You know this pattern well. Something feels off, so you try to talk about it. The avoidant shuts down, gets defensive, makes vague statements about trying, or flips the issue back onto you. The conversation ends without resolution. You feel drained or confused, and nothing in their behavior actually shifts. People who value themselves don't keep signing up for that cycle. They decide that every meaningful conversation about the relationship needs to lead to something concrete. Not abstract promises, not "let's see how it goes." Real commitments, with real timelines and observable actions. In real life, that might sound like calmly saying, "I care about you, but I need clarity about where this is heading. I'm not asking you to decide this second, but I do need you to think seriously about whether you want a committed relationship with me. Let's talk again on Saturday, and I need you to be clear with me about what you want." Notice what's different here. You're not pleading, you're not threatening, you're not exploding out of frustration. You're simply naming your needs and setting a reasonable window for them to reflect and respond. You're also making it clear that staying in limbo indefinitely is no longer acceptable for you. The most important part comes next. When Saturday arrives, if they're still evasive, or if they offer words without any real behavioral change in the weeks that follow, you have to be willing to walk away. Avoidant partners will often test whether your boundaries are solid or flexible. If you keep shifting the line, they'll keep sidestepping real intimacy. An avoidant who is capable of growth will feel uncomfortable with this boundary, but they'll respect it. Some even end up appreciating it later because on a deeper level, many avoidant people know they need external structure to push past their fear of closeness. Time and time again, when someone finally stops accepting vague answers, the avoidant either becomes honest about their intentions or reveals they were never planning to commit. Either outcome gives you clarity, and clarity gives you power. Avoidant partners are often accustomed to ambiguity. They're used to relationships where things are undefined and stretched out, where no one ever asks them to choose. When you stop tolerating that, you change the entire dynamic. You're saying, "I value myself too much to live in uncertainty forever." That level of self-respect is deeply attractive to someone who's actually capable of a healthy relationship, and it naturally repels someone who just wants to keep you as an option. Another boundary that matters is recognizing that their anxiety is not your emergency. Avoidant partners often do this paradoxical thing. They push you away, ask for space, and act overwhelmed by closeness. But when you finally give them space and start refocusing on your own life, they suddenly feel anxious and rush back with attention and affection. This creates an anxious avoidant loop where you're constantly reacting to their emotional swings instead of honoring your own needs. The boundary here is straightforward, but it can feel uncomfortable at first. You stop rearranging your entire life the moment they decide they want connection again. You stop being endlessly available to someone who only shows up when it suits them. Imagine they've been distant all week. short replies, cancelled plans, an overall sense that you're an inconvenience. Then, out of nowhere on a Friday night, they text saying they miss you and want to see you. Most people immediately drop their plans and rush over, relieved to feel wanted again. But that response quietly reinforces the unhealthy pattern. Instead, you might reply with something like, "I'm glad you reached out. I already have plans tonight, but I'm free Sunday afternoon if you'd like to spend time together." What you're communicating is that you have a life that doesn't pause on demand. Your time and energy aren't automatically available after periods of distance. This isn't about being petty or strategic. It's about teaching, through behavior, that relationships require steady effort, not just bursts of affection driven by fear of losing you. A person who's capable of meeting you emotionally will take this in and adjust. Someone who isn't will feel frustrated that you're no longer playing along. And if they walk away because of that, it's a loss you're better off accepting. What makes this boundary healthy instead of manipulative is that it's real. When they pull back, you genuinely pour into your friendships, your interests, your goals. You're not pretending to be busy to prove a point. You're actually living your life. And when they come back, you're not withholding affection as punishment. You're simply continuing the life you built while they were gone. Another crucial boundary involves intimacy without emotional connection. This is where many people get trapped for years. Physical closeness, sleepovers, affectionate routines, all happening while the avoidant refuses to define the relationship, open up emotionally, or show consistency. The boundary here is clear. If they're unwilling to offer emotional intimacy, they don't get the privileges of a relationship. That includes physical closeness, but it also includes the emotional labor you provide, being their confidant, their support system, or their companion whenever it's convenient for them. This is especially hard when feelings are involved. But here's the reality. When an avoidant partner receives all the benefits of closeness without having to face the discomfort of vulnerability, there's no incentive for them to change. They're comfortable. They're getting exactly what they want. Setting this boundary might sound like saying, "I really enjoy being with you, but physical intimacy without emotional connection doesn't work for me anymore. I need us to be able to talk honestly about our feelings and intentions if we're going to continue this." Or it might be, "I care about you, but I can't keep being your emotional support while you disappear whenever things get close. I need mutual effort and consistency." When you do this, one of two things almost always happens. Either they realize they're about to lose something meaningful and begin showing up differently, or they leave because they're not ready for real intimacy. As painful as that second option can be, it still frees you to move forward instead of staying stuck. Many people look back on years spent in situationships and say the same thing. They wish they had stopped offering relationship benefits in exchange for emotional crumbs. Without this boundary, resentment builds quietly. You give more, they grow more comfortable, and the connection never deepens. You're unintentionally teaching them that minimal effort is enough. When you finally say, "This is what I need to continue being close to you," you create a moment of truth. They have to decide whether the relationship is worth facing their fears for. And if it's not, then knowing that sooner rather than later is a gift to yourself. Another boundary that's essential is letting go of the role of managing their emotions. Avoidant partners are often very skilled at subtly making you feel responsible for their discomfort. When you bring up a concern, they shut down, and suddenly you're the one comforting them and apologizing for having needs in the first place. You try to express that you need more consistency, and they say they feel pressured, overwhelmed, or criticized. Before you know it, you're backtracking, minimizing your feelings, and trying to make them feel okay again. This dynamic is emotionally manipulative, even when it isn't done consciously or maliciously. The boundary here is that you stop taking responsibility for their emotional reactions to reasonable, healthy requests. You are allowed to want communication, consistency, and emotional presence without feeling guilty for it. Here's how this often plays out. You tell your avoidant partner that you need them to communicate more clearly when they're struggling instead of disappearing without explanation. They respond with something like, "You're making me feel suffocated," or "I can't deal with this kind of pressure." The old version of you might immediately panic and say, "No, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. Forget I even brought it up." The boundary-holding version of you responds differently. You might say, "I understand that this feels uncomfortable for you, but asking for basic communication isn't pressure. I need this in a relationship. Take some time to think about whether you can meet that need, but I'm not going to apologize for expressing it." You're not being cruel. You're not being demanding. You're simply refusing to take on the burden of managing their discomfort by abandoning your own needs. This boundary is essential because many avoidant people have learned that if they show distress, others will immediately back off. It's been a survival strategy for them for a long time. But healthy relationships don't work when one person's discomfort always outweighs the other person's legitimate emotional needs. When you stop regulating their emotions for them, you give them a chance to learn how to regulate themselves. And that's where growth actually becomes possible. People who are capable of growth may resist this boundary at first, but over time they often come to respect it. They may not like it initially, but they'll recognize that it's fair. What usually happens when you first enforce this boundary is escalation. They might become more upset, more withdrawn, or more defensive than usual. This doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It often means the boundary is working. Their old patterns aren't getting the same results anymore, so they test harder to see if you'll fold. If you stay calm, grounded, and consistent, one of two outcomes will unfold. Either they realize they need to take responsibility for their emotional reactions and start doing that work, or they decide the relationship requires more effort than they're willing to give and they leave. Both outcomes ultimately serve you. The key is maintaining compassion without self-betrayal. You're not telling them they're wrong for feeling uncomfortable. You're simply saying you won't erase yourself to make that discomfort disappear. Another powerful boundary is setting a clear timeline for the relationship to move forward. This is often the difference between people who lose years in emotionally unavailable dynamics and people who eventually build stable, fulfilling partnerships. You decide, for yourself, what progression looks like and how long you're willing to wait for it. And then you communicate that clearly. Maybe for you, it means that after 6 months of dating, you need exclusivity and a defined relationship. Maybe it means that after a year together, you need to be talking about long-term plans, meeting families, or building a shared future. The exact timeline isn't the most important part. What matters is that you have one. Without it, an avoidant partner can keep you suspended in uncertainty indefinitely. And if given that option, many of them will take it. This boundary might sound like, "I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past few months. I'm looking for a committed relationship, and I need to know if that's something you can see developing with us within the next month or so. If not, I don't think we're aligned." Or it could sound like, "We've been together for about a year now, and I value what we have. I need us to start having more concrete conversations about our future. I'm not asking for everything to be decided right now, but I do need to know that you see this moving forward. If you don't, I need to be honest with myself about what's right for me." This isn't an ultimatum driven by anger or fear. It's a statement of self-respect. You're being transparent about your needs instead of quietly hoping things will change someday. And here's what's actually beautiful about this boundary. It creates clarity. No more guessing, no more waiting, no more interpreting mixed signals. They either step up and meet you where you are, or they don't. And either way, you're no longer stuck. This boundary often feels terrifying because it feels like you're forcing someone's hand. But ask yourself this honestly: if someone has to be pressured into committing to you, is that really the relationship you want? Don't you deserve someone who chooses you willingly, not reluctantly? A timeline doesn't force commitment. It reveals the truth. Someone who genuinely wants to be with you and sees a future won't be scared by a reasonable timeline. In many cases, it actually brings them relief because expectations are finally clear. And if someone doesn't want to commit, a timeline simply helps you discover that sooner, saving you from pouring years into something that was never going to meet your needs. Here's the deeper truth about boundaries with avoidant partners. Setting these boundaries does not guarantee that they will change. Some people are so entrenched in their patterns that they're not ready or willing to do the work, no matter what you do, and that isn't a failure on your part. What boundaries do guarantee is that you stop abandoning yourself. They ensure that you're no longer sacrificing your emotional health for someone who can't meet you halfway. They ensure that you either end up in a relationship that functions or you reclaim your freedom and your energy. If an avoidant partner leaves because you set healthy boundaries, they were never able to give you what you needed anyway. In that sense, the boundary didn't cause the loss. It revealed it, and that honesty saves you from deeper heartbreak later. Avoidant people who are self-aware, reflective, and genuinely motivated to grow often respond differently. These boundaries may be uncomfortable for them, but they can become the catalyst for real change. They might struggle at first, they might need time, but they'll start showing effort. Some begin therapy, some start communicating more clearly. Some begin facing the vulnerability they've avoided for years. These changes don't happen overnight, but they happen because the relationship now requires growth instead of enabling avoidance. At the same time, many avoidant partners choose to walk away rather than do that work. And again, the people who held their boundaries look back later and feel grateful they didn't settle for less. If you're in a dynamic like this right now, ask yourself a few honest questions. Are you honoring your own needs? Are you accepting crumbs while hoping for a full meal someday? Are you putting significantly more effort into the relationship than the other person is? If any of those questions hit close to home, it's a sign that boundaries aren't just helpful, they're necessary. Not to punish anyone, not to manipulate outcomes, but to protect yourself and allow a healthy relationship to exist if the other person is capable of it. You can't control whether someone chooses to step up, but you can control whether you continue tolerating behavior that drains you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and them is to stop enabling avoidance and start expecting more. Setting boundaries takes courage. It takes self-respect. It takes a willingness to risk losing someone in order to stay aligned with yourself. That isn't easy, but it's essential if you want a fulfilling, emotionally healthy relationship. You deserve a partner who doesn't need to be managed, persuaded, or convinced to show up for you. You deserve consistency, openness, and mutual effort. And if the person you're with can't offer that, these boundaries will help you see that clearly, sooner rather than later. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on which boundary feels hardest to set right now. That's usually the one that matters most. And if you're interested in more conversations around attachment styles, emotional health, and building real self-worth, stay connected for what's coming next.